Bitcoin in one way is, in my opinion, twice as good as gold because it is portable, right? It's much more easily portable, transferable, movable than gold. Well, that doubles its value in my eyes. It's already twice as useful as gold because not only does it have a finite supply, which is another reason. So it's three times, right? Because gold doesn't have a finite supply. But so if I've got one thing that I've already thought of where Bitcoin is better than gold and it doubles its perceived value or the value that I believe the market should derive from it and it's twice as good as gold, well then the market capitalization over time should be twice as big as gold. And that to me is $21 trillion. $21 trillion divided by 21 million gives you approximately $1 million Bitcoin price. And so you look at that and you go, okay, so it's just needs to be one order of magnitude better than gold. And it's multiple orders of magnitude better than gold. So, okay, so we've got one order of magnitude better than gold. We've got the fact that the halving is coming up. And now let's look at how much capital you would actually need to get into to get it to $1 million per Bitcoin, right? Well, if you look at the Bank of America study, which, everyone has their opinion on these bull market multiples, and some people think it's 30, and some people think it's 3, and some people think it's 400, and whatever the number is, I like to look at Bank of America study because I think it makes the most sense for me. And at least when I've studied the price movements based on certain specific events in the market, the Bank of America model seems to be the average of what I've found, right? There's 118 to 1. It means $118 get added to the market cap for every dollar that gets put into Bitcoin. And so when you study that, I've got the numbers written down here. When you study that, a $21 trillion market cap divided by 118 gives you a net investment requirement of $178 billion into Bitcoin over a period of time. Now think about this. BlackRock wanting to make a 1%, so BlackRock's got a couple $2 billion in the fund, right, in their ETF right now. Well, that represents 0.02% of BlackRock's assets under management. If they wanted to make a 1% allocation of their total assets under management over a period of time, that would require a $100 billion investment. And I believe that a 1% allocation is coming over time. I'm not saying it's going to come in the next 5 days, but it is coming over time. That's a $178 billion investment that's needed to get Bitcoin from a market cap of 800 billion to 21 trillion, 178 billion. Well, BlackRock's 1% equals 100 billion. Right? And then you've got Fidelity that's already in the game, and that equals another 45 billion, right? And this doesn't include the demand that's coming from derivatives as soon as the options markets open up, and the options markets will open up because they've been filed for. It doesn't include the demand that comes from businesses. It doesn't include the demand that comes from institutions. It doesn't include the demand that comes from companies. It doesn't include the demand that comes from retail. Last cycle alone, there was $25 billion being pushed into there because it was mainly retail driven, right? Plus Michael Saylor's magic. So, and by the way, this 178 billion doesn't, or this 145 billion from just BlackRock and Fidelity over time doesn't even include other Michael Saylors. How many Michael Saylors do you think there are out there buying up a percentage of their net worth in Bitcoin because that they see that finally as the protection vehicle that they need against the amount of money printing that's happened? This doesn't include the fact that passive flows will start to come in, and it doesn't include the fact that the tech companies that Generation X looked up to allow them to give them the growth of their portfolio are now basically turning into dividend stocks. It doesn't include the fact that they will be pursuing growth as a part of their portfolio, and there is a completely reasonable expectation to say 5 or 10% of my portfolio comes out of the vehicle that has generated me growth, and I start looking for other vehicles, right? And it's not just going to be Bitcoin that benefits. It's going to be other growth accelerators too, but I think Bitcoin will benefit the best and the most. So there's a lot of dynamics here that could drive, $178 billion into the market. $178 billion is a splash in the ocean of the top 500 asset managers' wealth. Now, top 500 asset managers in the world control $130 trillion of wealth. We're talking about $178 billion trying to find this asset in a very, very short period of time. Doesn't include, by the way, lost coins, because the multiplier would go up if you included lost coins here. So there's a lot here. And by the way, it doesn't even include somebody coming in, taking a miner over and saying, okay, we're going to fund the miner. We don't want to sell any of that Bitcoin ever. Right now, the miners are holding onto that Bitcoin, selling it in the bear market. What happens if someone comes and says, okay, I want to buy that miner up, and I don't want to sell any of that Bitcoin? So there is and I think Berkshire Hathaway could be a perfect, perfect person or a perfect entity to target that sort of acquisition once they understand the benefit of Bitcoin, which they will do somewhere, I predict, within the $500,000 to $1 million Bitcoin level. And again, Berkshire Hathaway has different goals to you and I. So there is a lot of reasons here why $178 billion can find its way into Bitcoin in a very, very short period of time. And just to put it into perspective, right, $178 billion is a fraction of the $10 trillion. It's like, what is that, 0.1% of the 10 trillion, 0.17% of the $10 trillion that's already in gold. So could you see 0.17% that's already in gold escaping to Bitcoin once they understand what Bitcoin is? That's your $178 billion right there. So, you've got, there's a lot of demand vectors that are opening up here that people are really not respecting. If you're someone who is looking at this going, oh, that could never happen, then this video is not going to make much sense to you. It's going to be a video where you basically say, oh, this another bunch of rubbish. But if you really want to understand how close the idea of a $1 million Bitcoin is, and you can understand numbers in a compounded way rather than just a linear fashion, then that's who this video is for. And while that video is for you, you should subscribe, because as you subscribe, you make sure you don't miss any more videos, and you help me train the YouTube algorithm to put Bitcoin content in front of more people so that they don't miss out on the opportunity while Wall Street gets its grips on 2,000 Bitcoin a day, because that's what's happening right now. A lot of people were bullish 2 years ago about $1 million price target, and now they're less bullish. And I believe this is because of rotation of knowledge that's coming in. And unfortunately, what that means to me, the way I read it, is that the people who could benefit most from Bitcoin are losing faith in Bitcoin, but the people who need Bitcoin the least, so to say, to not really need the least, but the people who are already rich, who understand how markets work, etc., are now coming and taking the reins of that bullishness and running with this, and they're going to leave the other people behind. So it's very, very important. $1 million Bitcoin is not too far away. $1 million Bitcoin is only $178 billion of buying based on Bank of America's multiple, and I believe that multiple climbs as the halving comes through. Remember, you got ETFs buying up 2,000 Bitcoin a day net at this point, and the halving is about to drop the daily supply from 900 to 450, and the 2,000 Bitcoin a day that the ETFs are buying is one buying vehicle. Doesn't include retail. It doesn't include companies. It doesn't include any of the things that I mentioned. So this is quite ridiculous for people to think that $1 million Bitcoin is too far away. We don't know the timeline. Samson Mao certainly believes that it's going to happen a lot sooner than I do. But to believe that $1 million Bitcoin is so far into the future, you've got to be an absolute moron at this point. Right? The amount of demand that's been unlocked here is absolutely phenomenal. Yes, there is a bit of rotation going on in capital through GBTC, but if you are a long-term investor, now is the time for your acquisition. Like, we've got, the number one $200 billion gorilla of a buying vehicle open now, and the price has dipped, and you're sitting there wondering, when is the right time to get in? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me, right? If you understand markets, now is the time that you are getting in. If you understand how assets climb, now is the time that you're getting in. And one day when you wake up, you are going to experience a crash between unlimited dollar printing and absolute finality of scarcity. And at that point, it will be too late. Because just like the Tesla chart of what happened to Tesla in 2019, 2020, 2021, you are going to see a sudden rush of capital. All the Russell 2000 asset managers rushed into Tesla during that time period, and it took the stock parabolic. What's going to happen to Bitcoin when there are no other Bitcoins, when it's the only vehicle that you can invest in, and everyone wants a piece, and there's only 21 million? I can't do a stock split. I can't do anything. There's only 21 million. Can't print more Bitcoin. There's only 21 million. What do you think's going to happen at that point? So if you're sitting there going $1 million Bitcoin is unrealistic, I think you need to do some self-evaluation. But ultimately, despite what you think about $1 million Bitcoin, there are always only 3 rules to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy.